point in time, I want to introduce our guest of honor tonight. She's our guest speaker, Miss Bettie Dahmer. This woman is living proof of Hattiesburg's human rights history. She's our living legacy, and I wanted personally to welcome her tonight to share what she's been through and what human rights in Hattiesburg means, both on the ground and what the absence of it also means. So without further ado, Miss Bettie Dahmer.
Good evening.
Good evening.
And I'd like to thank the Human Rights Group for inviting me to speak tonight as the speaker for your first Human Rights Week. I'm going to cover a variety of subjects tonight, and it won't be a speech per se, but I will be giving my impression of various facts. I'm going to start with my life prior to January the 10th, 1966. I was the only girl out of 8 children, and since there'd never been a girl in my family, they just treated me like one of the fellas. I was raised in a blended family. My daddy was married 3 times. By his first wife, he had 3 sons. By his second wife, he had 3 sons. And by my mom, his final wife, there was a boy and me. When Miss Warney, my daddy's first wife, would come to town, I would go visit. So they got along well, even though they were divorced. Miss Warney would take me shopping to buy me clothing items. My brother Martinez, which was by Miss Warney, would take me shopping as well when he would come to town, and he would let me pick out whatever clothing I wanted. My mother always made me take it back because we always picked out age-inappropriate clothing. My brother George had a hot rod car. That's my brother by my daddy's second wife. And in his hot rod car, it didn't have any floorboards. It didn't have a windshield. It didn't have a hood over the motor. And I was a baby, and what he would do, he would tie me to the seat of the car. And roads were dirt roads at that time. And we would ride up and down the dirt road, and he would tie me to the seat so that I wouldn't fall out. I had a blast. In my family, I didn't have half-brothers or step-brothers. Those terms were not used at my house. Daddy would say, either he's your brother or he's not. I was 10 years old when Daddy died, and at 10 years of age, I could drive a tractor, a standard shift truck, knew how to change tires, siphon gas out of tanks. Daddy had a planer mill, a sawmill, and all kind of equipment, and my brothers would steal the gas out of Daddy's vehicle to put in their cars when they got ready to go someplace. So they taught me how to siphon gas because they knew if I had done it too, I couldn't go tell Daddy what they had done. I knew that if a battery was weak and a car would not start, all you had to do was put a car on a small incline, cut the motor on, put the vehicle in second gear, get off the clutch while pressing on the gas pedal, and the vehicle would most likely start. Just make sure you parked it on a small hill so that you could start it up again when you got ready to leave. Daddy taught us all to work for what we wanted. He would say, if a man won't work, he will steal. He also taught us to be respectful to older people. Also, children were not allowed to sit around and listen when grown folks were talking. There were just certain things that were not discussed in mixed company. There's always work to be done on farms. Every day there's something to be done. Fences had to be mended, the livestock had to be fed. You had to feed the livestock before you could eat yourself. We grew a lot of the food that we ate. Corn, English peas, greens, sweet potatoes, field peas, butter beans, green beans, squash, radishes, Irish potatoes, onions, watermelons, cantaloupe, cucumbers, cabbages, sugar cane, peaches, pears, and the list goes on. Something was always growing in the garden. If Daddy planted it, Mama and I, with the help of my brothers, helped picked it, cooked it, and put up some for use later. Daddy also grew cotton, which had to be hoed out, then picked before it could be sold in the fall of the year. On Sundays after church, we would go to experiment stations, and for those of you who know nothing about farming, Mississippi State University has experiment stations, they still do, had them back then, where you could go and learn how to increase the yield of your crop. So on Sundays after church, that's what we did. We went to experiment stations. There's a lot of work involved with living on a farm. Nobody asked me if I wanted to work. Not working was not an option. At a young age, I realized that I did not want to work on a farm for the rest of my life. I would pray, Lord, please let me live to get grown so I can have some say-so over what I would and would not do. Children were not consulted in Vernon Dahmer's house about much of anything. Vernon Dahmer told you what you would do, whether it was about work, church, school, being in the band, piano lessons, or anything else. I can remember him telling my brothers, as long as you live in this house and your feet are under my table, you will do what I tell you to do. My brothers didn't have any response. I learned that all grown folk need their own house. And I don't think that's a bad thing.
Amen.
Daddy also had a sawmill where he cut lumber for other folks. He cut most of the lumber that was in the house that the Klan bombed. There was a carriage on the sawmill, and for those of you who know nothing about lumber, it was like a train track, and it went back and forth by a big saw where the logs were cut according to specifications. My brother Penny drove the carriage and would set the specifications for the cutting of the lumber based upon what Daddy told him. I would ride the carriage back and forth while Penny guided the logs past the saw. I called it riding the train. Daddy expected as much out of me, I guess in his own way, as he did the boys. I would often go with him when he would be hunting or selling lumber to various people that came to purchase items from him. He would try to teach me, and I was 10 when Daddy died, how to figure linear feet. Well, at 10 years of age, I could not couldn't conceptualize how to figure linear feet. And I remember him telling my mama, saying to my mama, he said, well, what are we feeding her for if she can't, if I have no use? I had no use. I wasn't doing what I was supposed to be doing. Your husband hadn't taught me math then, Miss Kathy. If Daddy had lived, I feel sure I would have known how to figure linear feet. Because of the way I was raised and because of the people that I was raised by, I feel like I'm prepared more or less to survive no matter what happens. A lot of things changed. Most things changed with our family after January the 10th, 1966. That's the night that 14 people came to our house and threw Molotov cocktails through the window of the house. They positioned themselves around the house so that they could shoot us as we tried to escape from the house as it burned down. There were loaded guns throughout the house, and that is the only reason probably that I'm here today. Daddy didn't have to worry about reloading. He had guns stationed all over the house. But being a 10-year-old child I had no idea what was going on because my life was pretty much the life that I told you about here. We had men that came to the house that would discuss various things with Daddy, but when they came, children were not around. Children left. And nobody bothered to tell me, and I don't guess you tell your child either if somebody was trying to kill them. They just simply, if they told me, do not answer the phone, you did not answer the phone. You did what you were told. You had an option. You could do it before or after, but you were going to do what you were told. The night that it happened, Mama woke me up, said, "Get up, Betty, the house is on fire." She tried to get a coat out of my closet in my room. My room was located next to my dad's in her room. She couldn't get the coat out of the closet. But I went into her bedroom and Daddy was shooting out of the window. I did not know why Daddy was shooting out the window. I had no idea what was going on. The heat became so intense in the house that it caused me to be burned. I was never actually near fire, but the intensity of the heat caused the burns that I received. My mother was trying to open the window. She could not open the window, so she used her shoulder to knock the window out. And once she knocked the window out, our house had a basement. She was maybe this high from the ground, and she fell on the ground. Daddy stopped shooting long enough to come get me and lift me out and give me to Mama on the ground. He stayed in the house to continue shooting to protect us. My brother Dennis came from the back of the house. He ran up. He was in his underwear. Men didn't sleep in pajamas back then, and he asked, what's going on? And Mama said, they got us. Dennis might have known that Daddy was active in civil rights. I really didn't. If I was at home and I would wake up in the middle of the night and there were men in there that Daddy was talking to, if I got up and he said, go back to bed, baby, that's what I did. You just didn't question Daddy. He just wasn't that type of man that you question about anything. Once Dennis could see what was going on, he went back in the house again to get my brother Harold out. My brother Harold came up and Daddy was still in the house, returning fire, shooting at the people that were trying to kill us. As the people that were trying to kill us left, their car tires, some of them had been shot, so that made the tires made a noise as they were leaving, going up the road. And when we heard that, my brother Harold went up into the burning carport, got the truck out, and went to get to my aunt's house to get someone to come take us to the hospital. We retreated to the barn, which is still behind the house, and Daddy kept saying we've got to get out of the light because the fire was giving off light, because he didn't know if they were going to come back and finish trying to kill us. We sat on bales of hay in the barn, and there I was crying because I was in pain. And Daddy was there in his underwear, and the skin was hanging off of him like a sheet of paper. Daddy never complained. He never complained one time about the pain and agony that he was in. When we got to the hospital, I don't know if they had doctors on duty like they do now, but there was no doctor there to treat us. I was in intense pain and no one treated us. I walked back and forth on the dock at the hospital because it was cold and I was in pain, and the coldness helped relieve the pain that I was in.
My daddy was inside the hospital.